Hi, my name's Steve. I've been involved with Extinction Rebellion since about the beginning, the first protests on the bridges in London. I'm now in Cardiff. We're on Romilly Rd in Cardiff in front of a tree which we were trying to save a couple of weeks ago from the developers' chainsaws. I'm studying for a PhD at Cardiff University in environmental leadership, and we're going to talk a little bit about what happened here, and even though the protest was ultimately not successful in saving the tree, how we feel like it's something to build on for the future. So this was a beautiful 150-year-old beech tree, copper beech, so one of those beautiful shimmering golden brown leaves in the summer. One of the main reasons I was protesting, I climbed this tree at about 5 a.m. in the morning and was there till just before 5 p.m. trying to stop it being cut down. There was a huge campaign, a local campaign, to try to save the tree. It was developers that wanted to cut it down. Basically, as is the story, all over Wales, all over the UK, they wanted to make some more money from the site, and it was more efficient if they cut the tree down. I live about 500 meters away from here, which is one of the main reasons I decided to go up the tree. It kind of appealed to me in the sense of thinking globally but acting locally. Here was an opportunity for me on my doorstep to try and make a real difference. Luckily, as you'll know if you're involved in Extinction Rebellion, there are a huge number of really skilled, beautiful people, and I had a lot of support from them, including the skills required to get me up there safely and stay up there during the day. So whilst I was up the tree, which was actually a real privilege and one of the best days of my life, and certainly one of the most memorable, behind me and enabling that was a bunch of really, really wonderful people who care deeply about other people and the environment, and also issues such as this. So we were helping a local campaign. It wasn't Extinction Rebellion campaign, it was a local campaign to save this tree. But we came in and tried in the final moments to stop it being cut down. So I was up there from about 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. and throughout the day the contractors were basically working on other trees, so they didn't stop altogether. There was a tree next door, they cut that down. That was a mature tall tree until they cut it down, and they also cut down several other trees around the site, but it was clear that we were holding them up by me being in the tree and people protesting on the ground. So eventually at about 4:30, maybe 4:15, there was a change in the people on the ground, a change in policing, and at that point it seems that they decided to essentially try and get me out of the tree through intimidatory tactics. So they started cutting the tree down with me still in it. They moved in a contractor with a chainsaw quite close to me and started cutting the branches quite close to me, and then this was with a cherry picker. Then he got out of the cherry picker, and he was really skillful, incredible to watch. Basically, he would use ropes to suspend himself in the tree and cut branches, but he was doing that really close to me. And he had a chainsaw which he was using with one hand, cutting a branch, and then he would let it go, and it was suspended on his belt by a rope, and so that was swinging below him, and the rope looked pretty frayed to me. So I've been up there for quite a while, and I was looking at this thinking, this is actually quite dangerous. It wasn't just that they were in the tree, they were in the tree really close to me and above me, and there were people on the ground calling out, not just Extinction Rebellion people, just passers-by, calling out saying, what are you doing? This looks really dangerous. There were police watching, and the police had been there all day. There were police watching, and they had warned me that the work was going to start, and they said, are you going to come down? I said, no, I'm not going to come down, I want to protect the tree. And so they started work, and it was at that point I called down and asked for a helmet, because I was the only one in the tree without a helmet or protective visor, because the contractors obviously wear that stuff. I called down and asked for one, and someone went away to look for one. And then also at that point, when I asked for a helmet, one of the contractors on the ground said, oh, have you had enough yet? Are you ready to come down? So he was clearly they were trying to intimidate me out of the tree. And I mean, ultimately that worked, because whilst I was prepared to risk arrest and to kind of take some take some intimidation, I wasn't prepared to put myself in real danger, and it appeared that they were. And so yeah, I kind of figured if the rope had broken, the chainsaw was swinging. If the rope had broken, it could have landed on me, the chainsaw. So that's when I decided I'd come down. And also it felt pretty tragic that they were finally cutting the tree. There was a time in the day, probably about 2 o'clock, where they seemed to back off in terms of their determination to do it. And at that point I thought maybe we're going to win this day. And I kind of welled up a bit, and because it was pretty amazing experience being in that tree all day. Real privilege to spend that much time in a massive 150-year-old beech tree. It was a really amazing experience, and I thought we might have won, but that's why it was pretty sad when they started to actually cut it down. And you've probably seen it, they chop it limb by limb. They just work down the branches and snip them off, and so it's a very efficient but quite unpleasant process, really. And then so I came down, and they worked even though it got dark. They only had the road closed until 6 p.m. officially. They worked well past 6 p.m. and at that point they were clearly really determined to cut the tree down and get it done. And there are some people. By this time, I'd be taken away. I'd been arrested, but there were some people on the street who were pretty upset at that point. So it's really mixed feelings now, being back here 2 weeks later. You can see the kind of brutal aftermath of this beautiful tree that is now a stump. So it's kind of really sad that we didn't manage to save it, for the sake of the people who live on the other side of the street and the people who wait at the bus stop. There's decades of kind of beautiful natural environment, habitat for creatures that has been lost to the community, to the people who will live in these flats and houses, and to future generations. Wales has got, as we know, Wales has got the Future Generations Act. So every decision made by the council, by politicians, is meant to involve consideration of future generations. And there's a big question mark about whether decisions like this do that, or whether it's just it's nice words, but it's not really having any effect. So in effect, there is a challenge to politicians to try and rethink and rebalance the balance of power between developers and the community. Really, developers spend huge amounts of money and huge amounts of time lobbying and in effect blackmailing the councils, so that the councils don't have much choice. They have to do things because they need houses built, and they just need to get it done. So there needs to be a rebalancing of power there, in my opinion. And so being here again is mixed feelings. It was an incredible day, and there was a huge amount of support from the people on the pavement, the people in the campaign, people in Extinction Rebellion. Throughout the day, people were waving and cheering and interacting, and it was funny because there were times when passers-by would pass by and ask what was going on, and sometimes they'd shout support. There were a couple of times where, and I have to say, it was a kind of middle-aged white guy about my age, and they would look over and they go, "What's going on?" And I thought they were going to shout a bit of abuse or take the mickey or something. And both times they would say, "Yeah, right on," and they were really supportive. And so the kind of bonds that have been built on that day, certainly from my point of view, it was quite a powerful experience for me, are really strong. And the motivation of people to say, right, okay, we haven't succeeded this time, but we've got a lot more a lot of communal spirit from this, and we will take it to next time, and we will try to encourage better decisions being made and stop this sort of thing happening again. So